I'll just say it, I messed up big time. My name's Mary, I'm 34 years old, and I thought I could handle myself better. But if I'm being honest, I've never been great at making responsible choices. I guess you could say I've always been more of a go-with-the-flow kind of woman, or maybe impulsive is the right word. Either way, what happened on New Year's Eve wasn't my finest moment. But I don't think it's entirely fair to blame me for all of it either. So, here's the deal. I work at this small marketing agency where everyone knows everyone's business, including my boss, Gray. Gray is one of those outgoing life-of-the-party types who's somehow still professional enough that no one can call him out for anything. He's in his mid-40s, married with kids, but he doesn't act like it. The guy's always organizing happy hours, making borderline inappropriate jokes, and staying out later than the interns. Honestly, I've always thought he was a little too much, but he's my boss, so I learned to laugh along. New Year's Eve was no different. Gray decided to throw a party at some swanky downtown bar and invited the whole office. He made it clear this wasn't a work event, just a chance to let loose and ring in the new year with the people who grind alongside us every day, whatever that means. I wasn't planning on going at first, but Gray can be persuasive. Plus, it's not like I had a better plan. My husband, David, who's 35, had already said he didn't want to go anywhere. He's not a party guy and hates loud bars, so he stayed home. I figured I'd pop in for a drink or two, make an appearance, and head back before midnight. Harmless, right? Well, that's not how it played out. The bar was packed when I got there, and Gray was already on his second, or maybe third round of tequila shots. He waved me over like I was the guest of honor, handed me a glass of champagne, and said, "Mary, you're sober for New Year's Eve. Fix that." I laughed it off, but before I knew it, someone handed me another drink ... and then another. I wasn't trying to get wasted, but I wasn't going to be the buzzkill who said no. Besides, it's New Year's, isn't that what you're supposed to do? A couple of hours in, Gray started doing his usual thing, dancing, telling wild stories, acting like everyone's best friend. Somehow I got roped into a dance-off with one of my co-workers. I was having fun, and for once, I didn't feel like just Mary, the wife who plays it safe. It felt good to let loose, but looking back, I probably should have kept an eye on the time and my drink count. By the time midnight rolled around, I was hammered, like, embarrassingly hammered. Gray thought it was hilarious and kept making jokes about how I was the life of the party. I didn't leave until well after 1 a.m. David had texted me a few times asking when I'd be home, but I hadn't even noticed my phone buzzing. When I finally checked, all I saw was, "Are you serious right now?" Followed by, "Don't bother waking me up." That should have been my cue to call an Uber and get home ASAP. But instead, I stuck around for one more drink because in my head, it was already too late to fix anything. Might as well enjoy myself, right? When I finally stumbled through the door, David was sitting on the couch, wide awake, arms crossed with that look, you know, the one. Equal parts disappointment and frustration. I barely got a hey out before he hit me with, "You smell like a distillery. Do you even know what time it is?" I tried to laugh it off, but David wasn't having it. "Oh, come on. It's New Year's," I said, kicking off my heels and collapsing onto the couch. "It's not like I do this all the time." "You're drunk, Mary, and you stayed out half the night without even texting me back." I rolled my eyes because honestly, I felt like he was overreacting. I'm an adult. I can handle myself. "It was a party," I snapped. "What do you want me to do? Sit in a corner sipping water? I wanted you to respect me enough to come home when you said you would." "Respect you," I shot back louder than I intended. "David, it's not like I was out cheating on you. I was with my co-workers. Stop being so insecure." As soon as the word insecure left my mouth, I regretted it. Not because I thought it was wrong, but because I knew it would set him off. David's always been a little touchy about that. He hates when I call him out on it, even though I think he's too sensitive for his own good. "You think this is about me being insecure?" he said, standing up and pacing the room. "This isn't about me. It's about you acting like you're single when you're married. that hit a nerve. I shot up from the couch, wobbling a little, because, well, tequila, acting single, I scarfed. Just because I had a few drinks and stayed out late. Grow up, David. From there, things escalated quickly. He accused me of being selfish and disrespectful. I accused him of being controlling and boring. It wasn't our first argument like this, but it was definitely one of the worst. At one point, I think he even said, "You care more about what Gray thinks than what I think," which, honestly, was ridiculous. Gray is my boss. It's not like I was out flirting with him. David's paranoia is what drives half of our fights, and I'm tired of it. Eventually, I just walked away, locked myself in the bathroom, and stayed there until I heard him go to bed. Part of me knew I'd gone too far, but another part of me felt like he was blowing everything out of proportion. It's not like I do this every weekend. I just wanted to have a good time. Is that really such a crime? The next morning was rough. My head was pounding, my mouth was dry, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But honestly, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was knowing David was probably still mad, and I'd have to deal with it sooner or later. I rolled over in bed and glanced at the clock, 10:30 a.m. The smell of coffee was wafting down the hall, so I knew he was up. Great, no way I was ready for a talk yet. I stayed in bed as long as I could, scrolling through my phone and pretending I didn't have a care in the world. But eventually, my stomach started growling and I had no choice but to face the music. When I walked into the kitchen, David was sitting at the table reading the news on his tablet like he always does. He didn't look up, he didn't say a word. Just sat there with his coffee like I wasn't even in the room. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. He didn't respond. I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Okay, so you're just going to ignore me now?" Real mature, that got his attention. He put the tablet down and looked at me, his face completely expressionless. "Do you even remember what you said last night?" I sipped my water and shrugged. "Not really. But I'm guessing you're about to remind me. You called me insecure, like I'm some kind of jealous teenager." "Well, I trailed off, not sure where to go with that. It wasn't like he was wrong, I'd said that. But it's not like it came out of nowhere. I mean, you were acting a little insecure." His jaw tightened, and I knew I'd just poured gasoline on the fire. "Wow, Mary, you really don't get it, do you?" "What?" I shot back. "That you're mad because I stayed out late. That's what this is about, right?" "No," he said firmly, "this is about respect. About the fact that you don't even think about how your actions affect me, or us." I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Here we go again with the guilt trip. "David, I went to a party. One had a few drinks. I came home. End of story." Why do you have to make everything so dramatic? Because it's not just this one time, Mary. It's all the time. You don't think ahead. You don't care about the consequences. You just do whatever you feel like in the moment and expect me to deal with the fallout. That stung, mainly because, deep down, I knew he had a point, but I wasn't about to admit that. Not right then, anyway. Instead, I deflected. "Oh, please, don't act like you're some saint. You're not exactly perfect, David. I never said I was," he shot back. "But at least I'm not out getting drunk with my boss at 1 a.m. while my spouse is sitting at home wondering where I am." That's when I lost it. "You know what your problem is," I said, my voice rising. "You don't trust me. You never have. And I'm sick of it." He stood up, his chair scraping against the tile floor. "Maybe I don't trust you, because you keep giving me reasons not to." That stopped me in my tracks for a second. I didn't know what to say. Then, like always, my defense mechanism kicked in. "This isn't about trust. This is about you being boring and controlling and trying to make me feel bad for having a life outside of you." "Having a life," he laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mary, half the time, you don't even act like you're married. It's like I'm just some guy you share a house with." "That's ridiculous," I said, but even as the words came out, they felt hollow. Was he right? I didn't think so. Or at least I didn't want to think so. But his words stuck with me. even after he stormed out of the kitchen and slammed the bedroom door. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't entirely wrong. I spent the rest of the day avoiding him. I went out for a walk, ran a few errands, and even treated myself to lunch at that cute little cafe downtown. David was texting me by then, but it wasn't exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have. "We need to talk," he said. "This isn't sustainable." I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. Talking wouldn't change anything. He'd still be uptight, and I'd still be me. That's just how we are. But deep down, I couldn't help wondering if he was right. Was I really that selfish, that impulsive? Or was he just overreacting like he always does? By the time I got home, it was dark. David was sitting on the couch again, this time with his laptop. He looked up when I walked in, but he didn't say anything. I sat down across from him and waited for him to start, but he just kept typing. So finally, I said, "Are we going to talk? Or are you just going to give me the silent treatment all night?" He closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at me like he was trying to figure out if I was even worth the effort. "Do you even care about this marriage, Mary?" That hit me like a ton of bricks. Of course I cared, didn't I? But before I could answer, he kept going. "Because I don't know how much more of this I can take. You make me feel like I'm not even a priority to you, like you don't even care how your actions affect me." "That's not true," I said quickly. But he held up a hand to stop me. "Then prove it," he said. "Because I'm done being the only one trying to make this work." I didn't know what to say for the first time in a long time. I felt completely speechless. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe I'd been so caught up in defending myself and justifying my choices that I hadn't stopped to think about how they were impacting him, or us. But even as I sat there, staring at him, I couldn't bring myself to apologize. Not really, because part of me still felt like I wasn't entirely to blame. Part of me still felt like he was asking too much, like he was expecting me to be someone I'm not. And that's when it hit me. Maybe he was right. Maybe we really weren't compatible anymore. But what do you do when you realize that? How do you fix something that's already so broken? After David's question, "Do you even care about this marriage?" the silence between us was suffocating. I sat there, trying to muster up some kind of response, but the words just wouldn't come. What was I supposed to say? Of course I cared. But it's not like I could snap my fingers and make everything perfect. He didn't seem to understand that I wasn't some Stepford wife who could cater to his every need and still stay true to myself. Eventually, David just shook his head, like he'd already decided I wasn't worth waiting for. "You know what?" he said, standing up. "Forget it. You're not going to answer, so what's the point?" "David, wait," I said, but he was already walking away again. He spent the rest of the evening holed up in the bedroom, while I sat on the couch staring at the TV without actually watching it. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to go in there and talk things out. But another part of me was too proud, or maybe too scared. What if he really was done with me? What if this was the beginning of the end? The thought made my chest tighten. But instead of confronting it, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through Instagram, looking for anything to distract me. That's when I saw the photos Gray had posted. A whole slideshow from the New Year's Eve party. There I was, front and center in at least 3 of them. Laughing, dancing, and looking way too comfortable with a glass in my hand. One picture in particular made my stomach drop. It was me and Gray, arms around each other like we were best friends. His caption didn't help: "Work hard, play harder. Cheers to the best team in the biz." I could practically hear David's voice in my head tearing me apart for how inappropriate it all looked. And honestly, for once, I couldn't entirely blame him. The photos weren't bad, exactly, but they definitely weren't good either. Especially not with the way things were between us right now. Without thinking, I clicked on the comment section. Most of them were harmless, co-workers tagging each other, people making jokes about how wild the night had been. But then I saw one that made my blood run cold. It was from Gray's wife, Brianna. Looks like everyone had a little too much fun. Followed by a string of passive-aggressive emojis, my stomach churned. Brianna and I had only met a handful of times, but I could tell she wasn't a fan of mine. She had that polished soccer mom vibe that made me feel sloppy by comparison. I could imagine her scrolling through those photos, her mind spinning with all the worst-case scenarios. And now, here she was, calling me out in front of everyone. I put my phone down and stared at the wall, my mind racing. Should I delete the comment, text Gray and ask him to take the photos down? Apologize to Brianna, even though I hadn't actually done anything wrong? Every option felt like a losing battle. I didn't have to wonder long though, because a few minutes later, David walked into the room holding his phone like it was exhibitor in a trial. His face was calm, and that terrified me more than if he'd been yelling. "Did you see these?" he asked, holding up his screen. It was Gray's post. Of course, I could see the slideshow flipping through the photos automatically, each one worse than the last. "Yeah," I said cautiously, "I just saw them." And he pressed, "Do you not see how bad this looks, Mary?" "It's not bad," I said defensively. "It's just a work thing." Everyone was there. Everyone wasn't draped all over their boss, he shot back, his voice rising slightly. "Do you have any idea how this makes me feel? How it makes me look?" "Oh please," I said, rolling my eyes, "you're overreacting. Nobody's looking at these and thinking anything about you. This isn't about them," he snapped. "It's about me, it's about us, and it's about the fact that you don't even care how your actions affect me." There it was again, that same accusation, the same guilt trip. I stood up suddenly, feeling like I couldn't sit still any longer. "You know what your problem is, David," I said, pointing a finger at him. "You're so focused on how everything affects you that you don't even bother to ask why I might need a night out to let loose. Because you're selfish," he said bluntly, "that's why. You don't think about anyone but yourself." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I opened my mouth to argue, but he cut me off before I could even start. "You want to know the truth, Mary? I'm tired. I'm tired of being the bad guy every time I ask for a little respect. I'm tired of being the only one who cares about this marriage. And I'm tired of pretending that this is normal." "Normal?" I laughed a bit early. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were such an expert on what's normal. Maybe if you didn't act like such a stick in the mud all the time, we wouldn't be having this conversation." His face turned red, and for a moment, I thought he was going to lose it completely. But instead, he just shook his head and walked away again. This time, though, he didn't slam the door, he didn't yell. He just left the house, grabbing his coat and keys on the way out. I stood there frozen, listening to the sound of his car starting up and driving off into the night. For a split second, I thought about running after him. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Gray. "Hey, can you take down those photos? They're causing problems at home." It was a stupid move, one I regretted almost immediately. But I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. A few minutes later, Gray replied with a thumbs up emoji, and the post disappeared. But the damage was already done. I sat on the couch, staring at my empty glass from the night before, and felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time: fear. Not anger, not frustration, just pure, gut-wrenching fear. That maybe this time, I'd gone too far. Maybe David wasn't coming back. And maybe, deep down, I deserved it. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, my mind spinning in circles. The silence of the house was deafening. I kept glancing at the clock, waiting for the sound of David's car in the driveway, but it didn't come. Part of me wanted to text him, to tell him I was sorry. Or at least say something close enough to an apology to bring him back. But another part of me, the stubborn part, told me to wait, let him cool off, let him come to me. That's how he usually worked, but this time felt different. When the door finally opened, it was almost midnight. David walked in quietly, his shoulders slumped, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything, just set his keys on the counter and went straight to the bedroom. I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest. "David," I said softly, standing in the doorway, "can we talk?" He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. When he looked up at me, his eyes weren't angry anymore, they were tired, defeated. "What's there to talk about, Mary?" He said, "You don't listen, you don't care. You just do whatever you want, and I'm supposed to be okay with it." "That's not true," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow. How many times had I brushed off his concerns? How many times had I told myself he was overreacting, just to avoid admitting that maybe ... I was wrong? He shook his head. "I don't think you even realize how much you hurt me." I sat down across from him, my hands clenched in my lap. "David, I'm sorry, okay?" "I didn't mean to." "Stop," he interrupted. "Don't say you're sorry if you don't mean it. Don't say it just to shut me up." His words stung. But I couldn't deny the truth in them. How many times had I thrown out an apology just to end an argument? How many times had I promised to do better, only to fall back into the same patterns? For the first time, I couldn't find an excuse. I couldn't shift the blame. All I could do was sit there, staring at the floor, feeling the weight of everything I'd done. "Do you even love me?" he asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. The question caught me off guard. "Of course I do," I said quickly. "David, you're my husband. I wouldn't have married you if I didn't love you." "But do you respect me?" he pressed. "Do you even think about me when you make these decisions? Or am I just here, like some piece of furniture you don't notice until it's in your way?" The tears came before I could stop them. "That's not fair," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm trying, David, I really am." "Are you?" he asked, his tone softer now. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're trying to keep everyone else happy. Your boss, your co-workers, whoever, but not me." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't, because deep down, I knew he was right. I'd spent so much time justifying my actions, convincing myself that I was entitled to a little fun, a little freedom, that I hadn't stopped to consider how it made him feel. How it chipped away at the foundation of our marriage, little by little, until there was barely anything left. "I don't know how to fix this," I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. David sighed and leaned back against the headboard. "I don't either," he said. "But I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep feeling like I'm the only one fighting for us." I wiped my eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in months. He looked exhausted, not just from tonight, but from everything. From all the fights, all the apologies that didn't mean anything. All the times I'd pushed him away without even realizing it. "I want to fix it," I said. "I don't know how ... but I want to try." He didn't respond right away, for a moment. I thought he was going to tell me it was too late, that he was done. But then he nodded, just once. "Okay," he said. "But it can't just be me this time, Mary, it has to be both of us. And that means you have to start taking responsibility for your choices. No more excuses, no more blaming me for everything." I nodded, even though the words felt heavy. Responsibility wasn't exactly my strong suit. But if it meant saving my marriage ... I had to at least try. "Okay," I said, "I'll try." He gave me a small, tired smile. "That's all I'm asking." We sat there in silence for a while, the tension between us finally easing just a little. It wasn't a perfect ending, it wasn't even close, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. Thank you for listening until the end. Every story holds a piece of someone's truth, and maybe a piece of your own. If this touched you in any way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. See you in the next video.